Hey everyone, and welcome to a news update. Today it is a news update to the Blizzard France situation. Of course, that is Blizzard's European headquarters, and it's the one that they are, closing. This was a major piece of news recently, and today we have a number of updates to the situation. We've got an in-game protest going on, and very much a IRL protest, as the unions are calling for a strike on the day, I believe, that this video actually goes live. Now, the broad thing here to understand is that this, generally speaking, has been a large move from Activision Blizzard to remove power from Blizzard, the independent unit, and to basically centralize it. And there's a few different reasons why this is happening. It's something that has been heavily leaked. If you look at, say, any of Jason Schreier's articles covering this situation, the running theme has been, even in Blizzard Irvine, finance and etc. are getting a little bit more control, more so than they used to in the past relative to the developers. And basically, Activision Blizzard stuff is ratcheting up. Now, what's been reported to you via the likes of Jason Schreier's Bloomberg articles and his stuff at Kotaku, that's something that I can actually also confirm, and I believe Tips Out, a classic streamer, can also confirm through his chats with a Blizzard developer. So that's all stuff that you should be aware of. Now, the broad plan here was basically to close this, to close down the French unit, and then to, ideally, to move it into a London-based smaller unit that would be Activision Blizzard King, so all under the parent company, and that would essentially be a smaller operation. Certainly Blizzard's French operation was not particularly lean. Now this, of course, is a pretty major story. It is literally Blizzard losing power, and we've got updates, so let's get into them. Number one, the union is calling for a strike, and basically their call to strike document, it has a number of decently interesting things, including the accusation that this entire thing is basically a tax dodge, which is fairly interesting. Basically, they say that Blizzard, for the last 2 years, has totally denied to staff plans to close the French office. Now, of course, rumors within the staff did persist. I mean, I heard about this London plan, and this is from multiple, right? I heard about the London thing and basically, the France office going. I heard about that like a year ago, and I'm pretty sure Tips Out and, various other similarly connected people or sort of in the Blizzard circle will have known stuff like that. And by the way, yes, I would say Blizzard circle for myself because our other channel is a fairly large World of Warcraft one. So we've basically known that some shenanigans are going on here, and that's only possible if basically a whole bunch of employees did not drink the Kool-Aid, right? And did not actually believe when Blizzard actually told them that no, they're not planning to close the office at all. So this closure to some people did come off as a surprise, as this call to strike says. Now, of course, I very much doubt that for the majority of employees this would be a surprise. I would say, though, that technically speaking, if you're going to go by Blizzard's own word, then it should be a surprise to the employees, and therefore it is something that's worthy of being called up in a document like this. So that's something, and then also they call out Blizzard's measures to sort of train and prepare employees for this stuff happening to just be totally lacking. And they're especially angry at how 270 odd people are losing their jobs, and it is, I believe it's actually the current sort of belief that the vast majority of those jobs are going to be gone. So the union is really pissed over basically all these people being fired during COVID in a time where, and I bring up COVID, and they do, I think, as well, number one, for, I would say, a little bit of sympathy points. This is obviously a very bad time to lose your job, but also, I would say, because the games industry in particular has done well in COVID. I mean, just I was browsing Twitter, I saw a bunch of stats earlier today indicating that gaming could actually be tracking, at least in US, to be at its highest ever yearly spend, right? So gaming is doing really well. And then why are they cutting this office? Right? Because the sort of overt justification for it, what Blizzard is saying is it's all about streamlining and improving their operations. That could also be true, but we'll go into a little bit of why some of the union organizers don't particularly buy that. Now, in terms of other things, in this document we find out supposedly the Blizzard planned to cut jobs in March of 2020. That certainly would have been, an interesting way to commemorate roughly the same time period in previous year that the original layoffs happened. So yeah, that's a bit rough indeed. And yeah, apparently they had to give up on that plan to cut jobs in March of 2020. Now, work conditions as well, this is also something, work conditions in terms of the sort of psychosocial angle or sort of side of things got to the point where basically, if you actually look at the document, it's like French words, right? I don't speak French. I did a bit of Googling to work out, and it's basically the work inspection happened and it resulted in this part of the French labor code being called up, which is seemingly a right to notify of some form of harm to employees. So what does this mean, right? The working conditions deteriorating. We do not know what that means. Now, as you will have heard from the previous video, there was stuff that was a little bit weird changing. Seemingly, this is a document that I think obviously would not have that much respect for the leadership. I don't know how much we should read into this, because this obviously is a document produced by a union, therefore it does have its own set of biases, etc. But from what I understand, yeah, staff were basically a little bit deceived through this process, which is very much not an okay thing to do. And their lives were made harder. We do not know particularly in what way. I would certainly say, though, that it seems to me like a lot of people suddenly had a lot more work to do. And, like, stuff was not really that well planned for. I mean, yeah, like... It's the sort of thing, if you know anything about the World of Warcraft community team in America, they lost people during the cuts, and they didn't do a great job of staffing that team back up. And the reason why WoW is really struggling with community engagement, I would say, as compared to other live games, it's not because the staff there are bad. Far, far from it. It's because there's just not enough of them to do the job, because they've been cost cut so much, and I would say so blindly. I mean, from what we understood from back in the day there, it was a situation where people were pretty much, like, managers were pretty much just said, look, you got to cut this amount from your department, there you go. And people just sort of had to do it. So yeah, somehow work conditions have seemingly decreased to the point where this part of the labor code was invoked. I have absolutely no idea what those are. I do imagine this is something that could leak out, though, so perhaps we will find out at some sort of stage. Then also, and finally, it has just some notes there that their actual plan, at least the union believes, is to create a skeleton hub in London to leave the EU, of course, because the UK will no longer be in the EU, and via that get some form of tax benefit, which is something that would very much go against their main stated reason of wanting to streamline their operations. And overall, it's an interesting situation. I will absolutely say this. Blizzard have never been streamlined, and I don't think Blizzard have basically ever been good at operations. I think this is something that's decently obvious to people who have worked with Blizzard, and I think those people know that it is absolutely not the fault of staff at Blizzard. Yeah, that's something that I just think a lot of people sort of know. I mean, Blizzard has always been pretty old hat, pretty old school. They have not got with the times. I mean, seriously, they're the one company who would, put far more... I know of a literal story of some, like, old school person in Blizzard PR putting so much more sort of kudos or whatever into getting a few articles on Polygon that they did not have to pay for over a whole bunch of incredible organic community related stuff. And it just does speak to Blizzard being old hat, not really having its head screwed onto the way that things work in the modern era, right? I mean, they still think it's like Wrath of the Lich King, and gaming YouTube and sort of gaming outlets and all that stuff isn't really much of a thing, and it's all very traditional old media. So I would say, broadly speaking, Blizzard Entertainment, yes, under Mike Morhaim's leadership, had a whole bunch of issues. I would say, though, that with Activision, we have a situation where that same Blizzard that has all of those problems is then going to have less resources. And I would say that that's not necessarily going to make those problems better or go away. In fact, I do believe it would probably just exacerbate them. So that's the Blizzard staff strike covered. What about, though, this sort of player protest going on? Well, yes, there's a French streamer who has organized basically logging in and sitting in front of Orgrimmar in protest of the treatment of what's going on, or the treatment of the French staff. Now, that has been organized by a French streamer, and that is, I think, a particularly interesting situation. And essentially, part of that is that the way that it used to be, and mostly still is because it is working with that team in France, is, the people from other EU regions, so non-English speaking, like have got their contacts and stuff at Blizzard. And I think it's a situation where I think a lot of us do expect that this is going to be a humongously streamlined down situation, to the point where just some of those resources are going to go and some people will be just left in the lurch when it comes to contact and stuff like that. Now, of course, being an English-speaking channel, I think we'd be just fine when things move over to London, if that does end up happening. But it does seem like swathes of the community, right, could be a little bit left out, because Blizzard, I'd say, historically, they have actually went to efforts to directly represent, say, their French players, their Spanish players, their Italian players, their Russian players, German players. You get what I mean. It sort of seems like that stuff could go away with this change. So I think seeing those protests is really of no surprise. No surprise to me, anyway. Now, it's a situation where we don't know exactly what will happen when it moves over to London. I'm certainly expecting that I will lose access, maybe entirely. We'll have to see. Hopefully, we'll still get beta access to new expansions whenever that time rolls around. But I have certainly experienced, I think, quite a good situation with, I mean, first of all, with Blizzard staff, I've pretty much always had literally always had a great time. They've always been super fair, and even times where, literally, right, I was doing that promo work for them that I mentioned previously, where I was doing the new player's guide on the official World of Warcraft YouTube channel at the same time that BFA was coming out. While I was doing that series, and that was being published on sort of every week or so, I was massively criticizing the game and how badly designed, and I just flat out say terribly designed, so much of the BFA expansion was from a systemic perspective. And even through that, they didn't do a Bethesda and blacklist me or anything like that. The EU staff still were working with us, sending us press kits, inviting us to things, giving us a director or an interview with the game director of World of Warcraft most recently, even though we'd been a pretty darn critical bunch. So it's certainly going to be interesting, at least from my own personal perspective of somebody who sort of works on Blizzard games quite a bit, what's going to happen there. Like, I have to wonder, if it does move to Activision, will there be a bit of an audit of me? Will it just come to, nah, that guy is a bit of a dickhead who doesn't really like some of our decisions, we're not going to work with him? I'll tell you what, if my access to Blizzard goes from now where, it's a good working relationship, to be super clear, other than that one paid gig, I've never received any direct financial sort of stuff from Blizzard. I have received comped flights and accommodation and a limited food budget for one trip to California, and other than that, it's just stuff like press kits that they send over. But if I go from that level of, I can get an interview, that's offered to me, if I go from that level when it's under Blizzard France, and then Blizzard France goes away and it goes to Activision, sort of Blizzard King UK, and then that stuff goes away, then I'll be like, interesting. Blizzard could take criticism, and now that it's been centralized, it's been sanitized, and people who are critical are no longer sort of persona non grata. So that's something I'll be very keenly looking out for when it comes to the transition period away from wherever we are now in this strange limbo position where I don't even think the staff over there know what's going on, over to whatever ends up happening, because they are going to need CMs for this region. So there you go. The union is calling for employees to strike for all of the reasons that I mentioned, and we do have maybe the spark of some sort of player anger, player discontent going on. That's starting off via this French streamer doing a strike of the Shadowlands pre-patch outside Orgrimmar when the pre-patch comes out. So that's what's going on. I thought I'd let you know what's going on, and I suppose give a little bit of a signal boost to, to the non-English speaking EU, sort of Blizzard communities. I think they're probably a little bit worried about what sort of representation and stuff they're going to get in this new future where it turns out that the bit of Blizzard that did that for a long time is just going to be gone. Okay, that's it from me. I hope you found this to be an interesting video, and with that said, we'll see you next time.